What if the simple act of walking were a constant threat? It is not the path itself that puts you in danger, but what remains hidden, motionless, waiting. In the heart of the Amazon, there is no such thing as safe ground. The soil is unstable, soft, alive, and sometimes lethal. Every step demands attention. Every lapse carries consequences. Humidity is not a sensation. It is a condition that envelops everything. It clings to the skin, soaks clothing, and wears the body down without pause. Water is everywhere, but it does not always respond to those who trust it. Sounds offer no comfort either, and those who do not learn to listen simply disappear. Meanwhile, in our world, we have confused comfort with control. We believe that living safely is the natural state, but in the jungle, that idea has no place. Still, there are those who know this environment better than their own hands. People who do not avoid risk, they understand it. Who do not fight the jungle, but listen to it. They have made this lethal ecosystem their home, their guide, and their memory. Welcome to Planet Tribes. Today, you will discover 6 tribes that do not merely survive. They coexist with some of the most lethal and unusual predators on the planet. If you wish to join us on this journey through real stories rarely told, subscribe and stay until the end. Because the most unsettling part will not be what you see, but what is only barely suggested. Because the greatest danger these tribes face does not always attack. Sometimes it is simply there, waiting for you to take one more step. 1. Korubo, the danger beneath your feet. We are in the westernmost reaches of Brazil, in the heart of the state of Amazonas. Here, in one of the most densely forested regions on the planet, lives one of the most isolated peoples in the world, the Korubo. They are few in number. They live without regular contact with the outside world and have rejected, for decades, any attempt at forced integration. Their lives unfold among murky rivers, dense jungle, and ground that is never quite what it seems. Because in this part of the Amazon, danger does not always come from above. Sometimes it is right beneath your feet. For the Korubo, walking is not an automatic act. The ground reacts differently at every stretch. That is why they mark the terrain beforehand and rarely step where they have not first observed. Every advance requires reading subtle signs. Each movement becomes a deliberate choice. And when night falls, the risk multiplies. During the day, light helps reveal certain threats. At night, sight ceases to be an ally. And the ground, far from offering rest, demands even greater attention. We move through the undergrowth. Leaves crackle, but reveal nothing of what they conceal. Beside a fallen tree, barely distinguishable among the leaf litter, an immobile figure appears. It does not seem different from its surroundings, but it is alive. It is Lachesis muta, a massive, silent snake capable of remaining motionless for hours. It does not strike on impulse, only if stepped on. And when it does, its venom does not merely kill. It inflames, paralyzes, corrodes from within. It does not just threaten life, it turns time itself into an enemy. That is why the Korubo avoid these areas after rainfall and rarely cross enclosed spaces unless absolutely necessary. A few meters ahead, among twisted roots and moss-covered branches, hides Bothriopsis bilineata, a green pit viper that blends perfectly into the vegetation. Smaller, faster, and no less dangerous. It hunts unseen, and if a human foot enters its space, it responds without hesitation. Here, a misstep cannot be undone. It is endured. The Korubo recognize these places by the way leaves accumulate, and cross them only when there is no alternative. Not because they fear the jungle, but because they understand it. We continue along the muddy trail toward a wetter area, where the vegetation closes in. Between stones and fallen logs, a shadow slides past. Scolopendra gigantea, a centipede the length of a forearm. It does not need lethal venom to be dangerous. It bites with force. It causes fever, vomiting, and in some cases temporary paralysis that can last several hours and, in rare instances, extend for an entire day. It favors corners where the human body rests without looking. That is why placing a hand or leaning on the ground is never an innocent gesture. Every contact is deliberate. Further on, at the base of a hollow tree, something moves on the ground. It is not large, but it commands respect. Paraponera clavata, known as the bullet ant. A single sting has been described in medical studies as one of the most intense pains recorded in nature, comparable to being shot at close range. The pain is not brief or fleeting. It can last between 12 and 24 hours, with extreme peaks during the first hours. During this time, tremors, severe swelling, and temporary loss of motor control have been documented, leaving the person completely unable to walk, work, or hold objects. It is rarely fatal. But in the jungle, being immobilized for hours is a real vulnerability. That is why the Korubo do not step on it. They do not crush it. They avoid it. They respect it, because they know that pain also teaches where not to be. Darkness arrives, and the jungle does not calm. That is when the final presence of this journey emerges, Titius obscurus, a black, stealthy scorpion with nocturnal habits. It hides in bark, baskets, blankets, the corners of huts. Its venom is rarely fatal in adults, but in a child, it can be deadly. That is why, at the end of the day, the Korubo do not simply lie down. They inspect, they check, they shake out every leaf, every corner, every shadow. And even so, they know there are no guarantees. Every action, walking, stopping, hunting, demands full attention. Because here, a mistake is not corrected. It leaves consequences. While elsewhere, people move forward, trusting that the environment is stable, here survival depends on perceiving what others would overlook. And what if the real mistake were not walking barefoot in the jungle, but living as if danger were no longer part of the world? Because believing that risk remains still is an illusion. Sometimes it is stepped on. Other times, it moves with you. And with that constant attention, we continue moving through the jungle, toward a territory where movement does not mean escaping danger, but carrying it with you. 2. Nukak, when danger walks with you. In the jungles of southern Colombia, there are those who never stop. Their home has no walls and no fixed direction. Each night unfolds in a different place. Each day becomes a new route. The Nukak live in constant motion, in a nomadic existence where movement is not a choice, but an essential part of survival itself. Here, every step changes the type of threat, but never eliminates it. Along these shifting routes, there are no marked paths or guiding signs, only dense jungle, constant humidity, and the unseen. At ground level, among leaves and roots, Bothrops atrox may be waiting, a viper that does not need to hunt its prey. It remains still and waits. Its bite injects venom that destroys tissue and collapses organs, and in an environment without medical assistance, time becomes an emergency. That is why the Nukak move forward alert to the smallest changes in the terrain, avoiding places where leaves accumulate in unnatural ways. Near the water, Macrurus surinamensis moves in silence. Small, brightly colored, easy to overlook. but its venom is neurotoxic. It acts from within, blocking movement and breathing. When the body stops responding, there is no margin for error. That is why, among the Nukak, any unusual sign is taken seriously. A tingling sensation in the skin, a sudden clumsiness. It is not ignored. It is communicated. Not even rest is completely safe. When opening a bag, when moving, a piece of cloth, Phonutria fera, may appear, a spider with nocturnal habits and a rapid reaction. Its bite can cause intense fever, vomiting, and convulsions. In the most severe cases, the consequences are fatal. For this reason, before stopping, the surroundings are checked. Anything that will be touched is shaken. Observation comes before trust. Here, stillness is not synonymous with safety. The only real protection is constant awareness. But there are predators even more insidious than fangs and jaws. Those that do not attack with force, but with time. During the night, a simple bite from Triatoma maculata, an almost imperceptible insect, can change everything. It transmits the parasite that causes Chagas disease. The illness advances without warning, and when it finally manifests, it is already too late. That is why, at dawn, the body is examined with the same attention as the environment. Unusual fatigue is not overlooked. An irregular heartbeat is taken seriously. And if the camp is set near a watercourse, the buzzing of Anopheles darlingi may seem like just another annoyance. But this mosquito carries malaria, a fever that cannot be controlled, that weakens, that returns. In this environment, the body is not just a presence, it is a boundary. It is listened to, examined, read in the same way the forest is read, with attention, with urgency. A chill can be the first symptom, a minor wound, the gateway to something far worse. For the Nukak, moving forward is not routine. It is the interpretation of every signal, knowing when to move and when to stop. Because here, the true predator does not always bite. Sometimes, it lives within you. What happens when danger cannot be avoided, nor seen, nor fought, but only recognized in time? We leave behind the territory of the Nukak and continue onward, toward a land where the ground disappears and every decision is made within the river itself. Because there are dangers that do not lurk along the shore, but within the current. And in that environment, entering is never an innocent act. 3. Kulina, the water that shows no mercy. In many cultures, water symbolizes life, purity, rest. It is drunk without thought, crossed without hesitation, assumed to be a safe space. For the Kulina, who live along the banks of the Juruá River in the western Amazon, water is something else. It is not just a resource, it is a shifting territory, a space that breathes, transforms, and at times, responds. Here, knowing how to swim is not enough. Every crossing, every immersion, every day of fishing begins long before touching the water. The color of the river is observed, the stillness of the surface, the marks left by rainfall. Entering is not an impulse, it is a decision. Because the river never reveals everything at once. In calm, dark waters, Electrophorus voltae may be hidden, an electric eel capable of generating extremely powerful discharges. It uses them to hunt, but also to defend itself. A shock is not always fatal, but it can instantly incapacitate the body. And if it happens mid-current, the danger is not the shock itself, but what comes after. That is why those who live along the Juruá avoid deep areas without visibility, do not submerge in enclosed waters, and never enter alone in stretches where the river appears motionless. When the water is too still, they simply do not enter. It is not fear, it is interpretation. Further downstream, camouflaged against the riverbed, Potamo trigon motoro remains motionless, a freshwater stingray that is virtually invisible. It does not flee, it does not pursue, it simply is. But if stepped on, it responds with a venomous barb. The pain is immediate. The problem is not the initial pain, but what follows: infection, necrosis, and fever. For that reason, movement in the water is never rushed. Steps are slow, the foot is lightly dragged, the bottom is tested before placing weight. It is not about avoiding the stingray once it appears, but about never surprising it. During night fishing, other dangers come into play. Pseudoplatystoma, known as Surubi catfish, have no venom, but their size and strength make them unpredictable. Caught in nets, they can thrash violently, strike limbs, or overturn a canoe. Here, experience dictates when to insist and when to let go. Losing food is preferable to losing mobility for weeks, but not everything that lives in the water can be seen. Vandellia cirrhosa, known as the candiru fish, is feared not for its size, but for its behavior. In people unfamiliar with this environment, contact can cause extremely painful and traumatic injuries. In documented cases, the fish can enter body cavities, anchor itself with spines, and cause hemorrhaging, severe inflammation, and infections. Removal is neither immediate nor simple, and, in most medical records, requires surgical intervention. For this reason, those who live in this region avoid certain practices, reduce exposure time, and limit areas of the river where the risk is greatest. Even more invisible is gnathostoma, a parasite that can enter the body through contaminated water or raw fish. It is not noticed at first. When it manifests, it has already advanced. For this Amazonian culture, the river is not an enemy, but entering the water is never routine. It is a constant evaluation. The color, the stillness, the apparent depth. Everything communicates, everything can warn. In many places, water is taken for granted as safe. Here, it is a living environment that can injure, paralyze, or infect. Every entry is conscious, never automatic. If you have made it this far, you already know this journey is not superficial. If this passage through the Amazon rainforest is drawing you in, subscribe and keep watching, because what comes next does not hide or crawl. It is lived every day, and even when understood, it remains dangerous. 4. Yekuana, the normalization of risk. Along the banks of the upper Orinoco, on the border between Venezuela and Brazil, lives one of the oldest peoples of the Amazon, the Yekuana. Here, the river is not just part of the environment, it is the axis of life. Everything revolves around it: transportation, fishing, children's games, bathing at the end of the day. But this constant bond with water comes at a cost. Risk ceases to be an isolated event and becomes part of everyday routine. Beneath the surface moves Potama trigon or bigni, a freshwater stingray that buries itself in the riverbed, covered by sediment. There is no chase, no warning here. The mistake happens in the silence of a misplaced step. The pain is immediate, the wound deep. The Yekuana have learned to recognize the areas of greatest risk, to walk while lightly dragging their feet so as not to surprise them. And if a sting occurs, they know which plants to apply, how to reduce inflammation, when to move, and when not to. In more active fishing areas, Ageniosis spp. appear, known as channel, catfish. They have sharp pectoral spines capable of piercing the skin at the slightest contact. They are common in nets and traps. Adults teach the younger ones how to handle them carefully, where to hold them, how to cut them, what never to touch. Every movement matters. But in the water, there is also speed and bites. Cerassalmus rhombeus, one of the most aggressive species of piranhas, can attack in groups when they feel provoked. Although attacks on humans are uncommon, if there is blood in the water or sudden movement, the risk is real. The Yekuana do not enter the river without first observing. They check for unusual activity, whether birds are moving away, whether the water is too turbid. Everything can be read. Everything can be a warning. Outside the water, risk changes form, but not presence. Simulium guyanense, a small black fly, seems insignificant, but it transmits onchocerciasis, also known as river blindness. A bite does not hurt, but over time, it can take away sight. They protect themselves with mud, smoke, and precise management of exposure times. They do not expose themselves when risk is highest. And from the thick forest, at dawn or dusk, appears Hemagogus janthinomys, the yellow fever mosquito. It does not buzz, it does not warn, but it leaves its mark on the body. High fever, vomiting, hemorrhages. That is why here, no gesture is small. A rash is not ignored. A bad dream can be a warning. And a bite is never just a bite. For the Yekuana, danger is no longer an exception. It is part of the landscape. And most striking of all, they no longer perceive it as a constant threat, but as a condition one learns to live with. Accumulated experience is passed on with precision. What to do, what to avoid, what must never be overlooked. There is no drama, no haste, only a routine refined over centuries. Elsewhere, a wound is a setback. Here, it can mark a before and an after. In the darkness, what cannot be seen does not warn. It leaves traces, for days, or forever. And now, you will understand why. 5. Kaxinawá, night and slow. Venom. When night falls, the world seems to stop. In many places, it is synonymous with rest. But for the Kaxinawá, also known as the Huni Kuin, night is something else. It is a change of rules. A time when darkness does not protect, but exposes. They live between the Purus and Jordão rivers, in eastern Brazilian Amazonia. Their day ends with rituals, fire, and songs. But their real test begins when the light disappears. Because here, activity does not cease at nightfall. It only transforms. At that moment, both Rhacophius hyoprora emerges from its hiding place, a snake that prefers to hunt at night. It does not strike quickly. It does not need to. Its venom acts slowly, affecting blood coagulation and causing necrosis. A bite may take hours to show its effects, but when it does, the damage is already deep. That is why the Kaxinawá sleep elevated, on platforms or in hammocks, away from the ground. But even so, there are no guarantees. Sometimes the threat does not crawl. It slips into the smallest corner. Loxosceles amazonica, a recluse spider, can hide inside clothing or among blankets. Its bite, almost imperceptible at first, leaves a wound that grows, darkens, and becomes painful over time. Some cases end in open ulcers, others in fever or kidney damage. The venom does not kill immediately, it lingers. Also active at night is Titius metuendus, a scorpion that is rarely seen coming. Small, silent, nocturnal. Its sting can cause acute pain, vomiting, and heart rhythm disturbances. For children, it represents a real threat. That is why here, everything is checked before sleeping. And upon waking, the first thing that is shaken is not the body, but the place where one has slept. But there are venoms that do not come with fangs or stingers. They come flying. Aedes serratus, a mosquito active in the early hours of the night, transmits viruses such as dengue and yellow fever. A single bite can disrupt the body's balance for days, and in some cases, forever. Hematobia, a small blood-feeding fly, also finds its moment in the darkness. It does not just leave bites, it leaves infections. And every wound in the skin, no matter how small, is a point of entry. Here, a bite is not scratched. It is treated, observed, remembered. For the Kaxinawá, sleeping does not mean disconnecting. It means trusting in what has been learned, in inherited gestures, in the body as a barrier, and in the mind as the only defense when everything else goes dark. Elsewhere, night is a pause. Here, it is a test. After all this, one might think there is nothing left, but there is still one last tribe to discover, and with it, the most persistent risk of all, one that almost never shows itself, and when it does, it gives no warning. 6. Tsimane, the silent wear. Risk here does not appear suddenly. It does not erupt. It does not surprise. It is built day after day. This is the life of the Tsimane, an indigenous people who live between the Maniki and Apare rivers, in the heart of the Bolivian Amazon. In this territory, survival is not about reacting to a single emergency. It is about sustaining the body for years in an environment that never grants respite. The days begin early. Before the sun heats the ground, people walk to the river, check traps, fish, gather, carry heavy loads, and return along the same damp paths. None of this is done in haste. Here, haste is the enemy of the body. Every daily gesture is designed to reduce damage, not to eliminate it. Water is entered slowly, testing the bottom before placing weight. Feet are dragged lightly to avoid surprising what remains hidden beneath the mud. The terrain is never trusted from memory. It is observed as if for the first time, every time. Beneath the river lies Potamotrigon schroederi, a freshwater stingray that gives no warning. Contact with the water is never impulsive. A single, misjudged step is enough for the barb to pierce the skin. The pain is neither immediate nor dramatic. It settles in. It remains. When an injury occurs, the day does not continue as planned. Work stops. The wound is cleaned, drained, monitored. The priority is not to finish the task, but to prevent infection from turning an accident into weeks of immobility. In these same waters swims Hoplias malabaricus, the trahira. During fishing, when a net is pulled tight or a trap is released, it can react violently. That is why a hand is never placed in the water without seeing first. The water is struck beforehand. The catch is immobilized before being brought close to the body. It is not fear, it is method. Outside the river, danger changes form. Among damp roots and paths used every day, Bothrops matagrosensis may appear. Here, no one walks distracted. Eyes stay low. Steps are measured. Denser areas are avoided at certain hours, and closed vegetation is never crossed without necessity. If a bite occurs, there is no dramatization. There is action. The limb is immobilized. Movement is reduced. Time is gained. Because they know that every minute matters, not to escape the environment, but to limit the damage. Even the smallest encounters matter. Calycthus, an apparently harmless fish, has rigid spines capable of piercing the skin with ease. There are documented medical cases in the Amazon in which these punctures have led to severe infections, abscesses, and prolonged inflammatory processes, especially when the wound is not treated immediately. That is why here, any cut, no matter how small it seems, is cleaned and monitored. Because in this environment, a minor injury is not a simple setback. It is a risk that accumulates. But nothing wears the body down more than what cannot be seen. Anopheles, the mosquito that transmits malaria, does not hurt when it bites. It leaves no immediate mark. It simply returns. For that reason, people sleep protected by smoke, avoid certain areas at dusk, and reorganize schedules when fever appears. The illness does not stop life, it slows it down. And that slowness is paid for with accumulated exhaustion. The fever appears, disappears, and returns. Children lose energy. Adults grow weaker. The body never fully recovers before the next episode. And it is then that something fundamental becomes clear. True wear does not come from a single attack, but from repetition. Each wound forces a pause. Each fever redistributes the work. Each recovery returns a body a little more tired. The Tsimane do not live by chaining visible crises. They live within continuous resistance. Here, health is not a guarantee, but a fragile balance that forms part of the landscape and is sustained day after day through experience and constant attention. Because when risk cannot be eliminated, the only option is to learn to live with it, without breaking. Out this journey, we have walked alongside 6 peoples who do not live despite risk, but through it. Each one, in their own territory, has developed unique ways of listening to the jungle, of interpreting it, of coexisting with it. And although predators change, although danger takes on new forms, the lesson repeats itself. Survival is not about control. It is about understanding. These communities are not images from the past. They are a present reality of something the modern world has begun to forget. Nature does not submit. It is negotiated with. Thank you for accompanying us to the end. Before you go, if this documentary made you think, leave the word coexistence in the comments. That way, we will know you share this way of seeing the world, with respect, with attention, and without assuming that everything is under control. At this point, the focus is no longer on them. It is on us. Do you think that living more protected has made us live better, or simply farther from what is real? Leave us your reflection in the comments. We read them. Tell us, which animal surprised you the most, and which tribe made you see the Amazon from a different perspective? And if you have not done so yet, this is a good moment to subscribe and activate notifications to continue joining us on the next journeys. Because there are many more territories where life is not sustained by technology, but by wisdom. Remember, survival does not belong to those with the most resources. It belongs to those who know best how to adapt. See you on the next journey.